Well, I would like to welcome everyone to the first of three Andrea Harris Task Force Business Engagement Group DEI discussion Lunch and Learns. I am Evan Grant and I serve as the Policy Director for the North Carolina Department of Administration. Aside from striving to enhance the lives of North Carolinians by providing foundational support to state government through asset management, advocacy, and operations, the North Carolina Department of Administration maintains a portfolio of boards and commissions, including the Andrea Harris Task Force. Established under Executive Order 143, the Andrea Harris Social, Economic, Environmental, and Health Equity Task Force addresses the social, environmental, economic, and health disparities in communities of color disproportionately impacted by COVID-19. The task force is named in honor of the late civil rights activist Andrea Harris, who dedicated her life to eliminating disparities in North Carolina, co-founding the nonprofit Institute of Minority Economic Development in Durham, and
Hannah, if you can hear me, you just sent me a message. It popped up in the corner and then it went away, and I can't find the chat.
Task force is named in honor of Dr. Andrea Harris, who co-founded the Economic Development in Durham and serving on the state's Advisory Council for Historically Underutilized Businesses. The 5 focus areas of the task force are access to healthcare, economic opportunity and business development, educational opportunity, environmental justice and inclusion, as well as patient engagement. You can learn more about the task force on the North Carolina Department of Administration website. This series of Lunch and Learns is the brainchild of one of our active and engaged members who wanted to strengthen the public-private partnership bridge by aligning the 21 environmental, economic, and health recommendations of the Andrea Harris Task Force provided to the governor in 2020. This is to look at the work and best practices of private companies in North Carolina. These Lunch and Learns are an opportunity for businesses across the state to discuss some of their successes and challenges with implementing various DEI initiatives within their organization. We hope these conversations will connect businesses struggling to adopt practices and will inform state agencies on potential avenues for implementation and encourage participants to advocate for DEI initiatives in their organizations. Again, I welcome you to the first of the 3 sessions, today being on diversity, equity, and inclusion, external mentorship programs, as well as supplier diversity programs. This discussion today should hope enlighten and inform you all on things that you can do within your organizations and practices that you can adopt. Again, we will have the Q&A available for you if you would like to ask questions to the panel at the end of the panel session. At this time, I will go off camera and return back at the closing, and I will pass it over to Justin Truesdale, who is the chair of our business engagement group, to discuss the purpose and the vision for these conversations.
Thank you, Evan. Again, welcome to our first of 3 diversity, equity, and inclusion discussion lunch and learns. I am Justin Truesdale, partner at Smith Anderson Law Firm here in Raleigh and chair of the business engagement group. As Evan mentioned, the task force was formed to address the social, environmental, economic, and health disparities in communities of color in North Carolina. The task force convened and worked on a number of recommendations and action items to help improve in the areas directed by the governor's executive order. Upon beginning the work, the task force leadership recognized that many of the things that were being done were from a public or government standpoint and did not want to overlook the role that the private industry in North Carolina could play in addressing many of the issues we face. So the business engagement group was formed to aid in engaging with the North Carolina business community, to aid in tackling the issues the task force was addressing from a different angle. The business engagement group decided to have a series of DEI virtual conferences that would allow us to connect businesses across our state with other businesses and public entities that have adopted DEI programs that have thrived and had positive outcomes. We believe that diversity, equity, and inclusion is an area where companies are not competing, but will mutually benefit from their competitors adopting similar programs. And we think this is a venue where everyone can learn from each other. Today's Lunch and Learn will be centered on external mentor programs and supply diversity programs. We'll hear from 2 leading companies with active programs here in North Carolina about what their companies are doing, how it is benefiting their businesses, and most importantly, how it is making North Carolina's economy better and more equitable. With that said, I would like to introduce our moderator for today's panel, Kevin Price, President and CEO of the Institute. The Institute is headquartered in downtown Durham, North Carolina, and for the past 30 plus years has worked with small businesses, large multinational corporations, local governments, and state leaders to open doors of opportunity and create an environment where businesses of all kinds can grow and thrive. Again, thanks to everyone for attending, and I will pass this over to Mr. Price.
Well, thank you, Justin, and good afternoon, everyone. It is a beautiful Friday, and so I know we're competing with lunch and the weather outside, so we'll try to keep this lively and keep the discussion flowing, and hopefully you all will glean something from this esteemed panel of experts today. And so the format for our conversation today will be a discussion, but first I'd like to set the stage a little bit, and then we'll have a conversation with our two esteemed panelists to talk about supply diversity. And then we'll follow that up with some Q&A for about 25 minutes or so near the end. And so let me start off by first just some acknowledgements. And thank you, Justin and Ebony Pittman and Comfort Johnson and Tanya Smith for your work in getting us to this place. And today's discussion, I'm just excited to see these two panelists who I think a lot of and have worked with for a number of years on supply diversity issues across our state and the corporate setting. And so today I'm joined by Andrew Greer, who is a supply diversity leader at Duke Energy, and Kate Weaver, who is a supply diversity leader at Delhaize Food Lion. And we'll talk a little bit about supply diversity in your world and what you see some of the challenges are and changes that are on the horizon. But let me take just a minute and set the stage a moment, because we experienced quite a bit the last 2 years. We experienced everything from a pandemic and illness that shut down businesses and people's ability to work, from that to racial discord that included George Floyd, that incident and all that happened with that, and the responses from that to the backlash with the Asian community. And then you flip all the way over to this economic crisis that we were also experiencing, where according to the Washington Post, we lost 41% of African-American owned businesses and another 36% of Hispanic businesses nationwide. And so here we are trying to operate within this type of challenged environment. And what we're seeing as the good news is that corporations and government organizations have been responding to this crisis. And they've been responding in many, many ways to address a multiple of issues to get us back on track. And so today, with our two panelists, we're just going to talk a little bit about some of those responses and some of the things that were already happening with corporations across our state. And so I'd like to open it up by just asking Kate, you and Andrew to just introduce yourselves for like 2 minutes and just give a quick thought on what you see in the environment today. So Kate, would you start first? We got to get you off mute.
I was just saying I got my sound working in just enough time to hear your presentations. I obviously was still on mute. So thank you so much for the welcome. Happy to be here today. Yes, my name is Kate Weaver. I'm here with Peapod Digital Labs, which is an Ahold Delhaize USA company. Peapod Digital Labs is the e-commerce and commercial engine that provides support to several grocers along the East Coast, including Giant Food, the Giant Company, Hannaford, Stop and Shop, Retail Business Services, and the ADUSA supply chain. But to all of you, the one that you know the best, Food Lion. Among the support services that we provide, Supplier diversity is definitely one of them, and that comes by way of identifying and connecting diverse-owned brands to our category teams to be offered on the shelf to our customers, everything literally from soup to nuts, to also working on hundreds and hundreds of RFPs that go out from our sourcing team on a monthly basis that span everything from marketing to IT to HR to forklifts to hairnets to even grocery carts. So yes, it is a big lift, but there's really no other function within any organization. And I'm sure my supplier diversity peers will nod about this, that supplier diversity truly knows every little project that's going on, regardless of the business area or vertical. So it's really exciting to be in this role and to be advocating for diverse-owned suppliers wherever we get an opportunity to. But specifically to your question about the socioeconomic climate and where supplier diversity is now versus where it used to be, I would say that the events of 2020 put a sharp focus on just how important all of this is to consumers or to external stakeholders, I'll say, to any of our government agencies, particularly when it comes to issues of race and social justice, which, and at the retail level, which is where I can provide context, right? The brands of Ahold Delhaize USA, including Food Lion, as well as many other retailers around the US, responded 2 summers ago with pledges to support local communities, to amplify Black-owned brands, and to revamp internal policies and programs to ensure that diverse voices are heard and amplified in both the community and at the retail shelf level. So the last thing I'll say about this, and then I'll hand it over, is the concept or notion of supplier diversity has actually been around since like 1969, but unfortunately it took the events of Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor and George Floyd to bring supplier diversity out of the contractual sourcing compliance world and bring it to the forefront of corporate initiatives. So I would never say the word that it was a silver lining, but I am grateful that now it's being discussed at such a high level. And I've been waiting for this for about 20 years, right?
Thank you, Kate. Andrew?
Yes, thanks, Kate. I concur with what you had to say and how it has impacted Duke Energy as well, that we now have that audience in many ways that previously wasn't there before. There was awareness, but we've definitely taken it to a different level. A little bit about myself. I've been in the supplier diversity industry probably about 20 years. I've been with Duke Energy 45 years. And through that journey, learned a lot about business, what it takes to keep the power on for our customers. But for those who don't know a lot about Duke Energy, we are a Fortune 500 company headquartered in Charlotte. We have about 7.9 million customers, mainly in North Carolina, South Carolina, Indiana, Ohio, Kentucky, Tennessee, as well as in Florida. So we're operating in one of the fastest growing regions of the country when you look at the Southeast, particularly just think of the tremendous amount of growth that's happening in North Carolina, South Carolina, and Florida with the influx of new customers for us. And like Food Lion, during the pandemic, the power had to go on. Food services still had to be provided. So at the same time that was occurring, yes, the social unrest is occurring within the country. Well, how are we going to respond? What agencies would we reach out to partner with to make sure that there was an impact in the communities that we serve, especially with the growth that I spoke of earlier, particularly in the African-American and Hispanic community, two of the fastest growing demographics in the Southeast. It was a definite impact in terms of this. So how would we go about doing that? We knew that supplier diversity was one of the chief ways of making that happen. Direct economic impact on minority-owned businesses, their ability to operate in this space, to continue to function. So we reached out to some of our partnering organizations to support them with grants throughout our service territory all over the country. That was one way that we did it. We were actively involved in various organizations as well as government entities as well in driving this initiative. And I can tell you that That commitment started from the top with our CEO, Lynn Good. I have the pleasure of working many years with my chief procurement officer and driving that process to make sure that diverse suppliers had opportunity, even during the pandemic when things were slowing down. How could we get diverse suppliers actively involved like never before? And we had our own crisis as we go through our supply chain challenges that's ongoing. Think of those supply chain challenges when they first started during the pandemic. It was diverse companies who stepped up and helped us get the materials needed to run our company when the large companies couldn't get those materials. So we signed agreements with companies to provide PPE items for us, all kinds of materials, provide services, food services for our crews to make sure that things kept going. So this gave an opportunity. Through crisis, there's opportunity. No matter how bad the situation, there's typically opportunity coming out of that. And so our role as a supply diversity professional and our team was to make sure that diverse suppliers played a role in that. And so definitely proud that our leadership stepped up to make sure that diverse suppliers were included in the process. But a little bit more about Duke and some of the things that we're facing in terms of challenges. We're building what's called a smarter energy future. You've heard a lot about solar, you heard a lot about wind, battery storage, a number of areas. These are areas of opportunities. And as we go through a pandemic, and we know that our customers want their power clean, they want it inexpensive, and they definitely want diversity and inclusion to be a part of those opportunities. So it's a little bit about what's going on at Duke. We are definitely active in the community. We want to be partners with the communities that we serve. And when you think about a company like Duke or like a Food Line, we're in every community. We're there on the ground. We're really face to face with our customers. So it's very important that we play an integral role in what transpires within those communities.
Thank you, Andrew. Now, Andrew and Kate, you all know me, and many of the participants that are listening to us know me as well, that I tend to shoot straight and not beat around the bush a whole lot. And so part of the conversation in the community is there's a lot of response right now to what we've experienced, and this will be short-lived. And so pretty soon the floodgates will close. People will be saying, we've been there, done that. What have you done for me lately? We're moving on to another issue. And so in order for supply diversity to stay relevant, it has to keep the business case in the forefront. And so I'd just like for you all to talk a little bit about the business proposition and the business case and how you're tying that to the company so you stay relevant regardless of what's going on in our social environment.
Can I go first? This is my favorite topic.
Sure.
Well, I do believe that job creation and economic impact is always the stand, just the easy stand back, that you can say, look at all the jobs we created, look how much money we brought to the economy. That's the easy one. It's not easy necessarily to get those metrics. You have to dig a little, but that's the easy one that everyone uses. For retail, specifically at a grocer or any retailer, I love those metrics, right? Because I can literally say, these were the diverse owned brands that were on the shelf. This is how many units they sold. This is how much money they brought in. I kind of always love this little rest of basket term. So I don't necessarily look at the, Black owned hair care item. I look at everything else that the customer bought when they came in and bought that Black owned hair care item, the rest of basket. I love those metrics. But my two tricks of the trade, if you take those off of the table, and to your exact question about how do you thwart the pendulum swing, is that you have to tie it, supplier diversity, to all your other programs and objectives. It's almost like you take all the big buckets that your company or your organization is working on, and you just make sure that supplier diversity is supporting them. And if it's not supporting them, you need to retool your supplier diversity program, right? Because they have to all feed into that. And if you can say you're doing that, then I really think management or leadership or whomever the powers that be will have a hard time severing the supplier diversity program or the efforts with diverse-owned suppliers. But my final thing I will tell you is that there is nothing like good old-fashioned market research or like a survey, like just a survey to gauge consumer or external stakeholder perception as it relates to your brand or your government agency, but as it relates to your DE&I initiatives. And I want everyone to write this down. If you don't remember anything I say today, write this down: Hootology. It's a certified diverse owned marketing research firm, and I mention them and also in almost every panel I'm on. They've been a game changer partner for me as to how to illustrate the business case, where before, when I didn't have this data, I probably sounded a little bit whiny, saying, "Oh, supplier diversity, we have to do it," So I think Hootology has provided me the just, it's more than data, right? It's basically they're showing what customers think of your organization as it relates to your diversity initiatives as well as your supplier diversity initiatives. It basically says to your PR and your comms teams, like, this is gold and you couldn't pay for this kind of press. And I do believe that this is the last thing I'll say before I turn it over. Supplier diversity, if done correctly, it's not a compliance-based check-the-box social movement. It's a high-yielding, positive PR engine that keeps giving. And that in of itself right there, that's the business case, period, right there, in my opinion.
Andrew?
Yeah, I would definitely agree. For us, along the same lines, supply diversity is part of our values, it's part of our mission, and it's in a business imperative that is part of all of our operations and what we do. We serving our customers, but also meeting the expectations of our regulators as well as our investors. And all the above expect us to be inclusive in our business behaviors, the dollars that we spend, who we engage. Make it easy for suppliers to connect with you and have an understanding of your business. So from our program standpoint, externally, it's very important that those business owners understand how to do business with us. We put in place a format called Supplier Diversity University last year, which Kevin participated in, which we had diverse suppliers who've been wanting to do business with us, but we told them how to go about doing that. The boxes you need to check in order to work with Duke. Safety is a big part of what we do. We want to make sure that everyone goes home safe at the end of the day, whether they're a Duke employee or a contractor. So understanding the dynamics of doing business with us. Safety is part of that value as well. And that safety goal extends to our customers. Internally, understanding business rationale and what we're doing. As I mentioned before, our customers expect us to be inclusive in terms of providing those products and services to them. Particularly when it comes to those energy related services. So we're very intentional about that, understanding where the dollars are being spent, how we can include diverse suppliers in that process, budgets as well. So while those are some of the check the box type items that must be definitely gone through, at the same time, that intentionality from the very top, and we're going to do this. We're going to learn from our peers, others. We don't know it all. We're going to learn from our customers. We're going to learn from other sources, particularly from suppliers. You'd be surprised how suppliers can step in and help you with the process in and of itself. And there's been various areas that we've been very successful and other areas that we've been challenged. And so the areas that we've been challenged, how can we look at it differently? What can we do differently to drive that diverse spend? And the biggest part is that of being just being inclusive from the very beginning, understanding what projects are coming down the pike, what suppliers are out there that can help us with that particular project, differences geographically that we face from one area to another, and understanding the dynamics of those geographical differences. But at the end of the day, finding great, competent, diverse suppliers who help keep our business going. And we have plenty of them who make Duke Energy what it is today.
And so, Andrew, you talked about support and some accountability from the very top. And so just curious how the interest has shifted, if it has, in your companies as it relates to the C-suite, your shareholders, and even your customers asking you all, and I'm talking your corporate customers, asking you all to weigh in a little bit more on supply diversity. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure, be happy to. There's a new initiative that we've kicked off starting about the mid part of last year. It's called DICE, Diversity and Clean Energy. And this was formed with our customers. So Duke Energy's at the table, T-Mobile, Microsoft, Kroger, as well as one of your competitors is at the table, as well as GM. And we know that renewable energy is huge. And so in terms of meeting our customers' expectations and providing clean energy, they've all come together and with us to say, okay, we want to build a platform, a brand new format for introducing new diverse suppliers who can participate in this billion-dollar arena of generating clean energy. And as I mentioned before, wind plays a very large part in that. Our largest construction of wind generation is a Hispanic-owned company, MasTec, that does quite a bit of work for us in that space. Also, we have a number of other suppliers helping us with that as well. But back to the DICE picture itself, being very intentional, identifying suppliers that meet customer expectations and help us drive diverse spend higher within our company, particularly in these brand new areas. Sometimes it's easy to get into a newer area where there's not established companies who've been doing this for years and you're trying to break in. So we look at creative ways that we can introduce diverse suppliers into that space. And it's not just the panels, the solar panels themselves or the wind turbines. There's all kinds of services related to that, anything from vegetation management on to studies in terms of environmental impact. And so bringing awareness to suppliers as to what's existing out there in terms of opportunity and how we can help drive that has been a very big part of that over the years.
Thank you. Kate?
Yes, I mean, I totally 100% agree with what Andrew said about when you find areas that aren't necessarily saturated, that are new, that's really where I feel like I have the most success with getting diverse owned suppliers in to meet with internal stakeholders. But I guess overall what I would say is that we're at a time where diverse owned suppliers do have to come to the table with something else, with something new, with something better. It can't be a me too. And if diverse owned suppliers are able to showcase that, and I'd say more importantly, communicate it to us, the supplier diversity practitioners, within those first couple of phone calls or conversations, that then we can be your internal advocate. And I hope I feel like I've just diverged. Should you ask the question again and make sure I'm hitting your exact point?
Yeah, I'm curious to know more of how far up in your company are you seeing interest?
Oh,
And
that's
are you
right.
seeing it at the shareholder level? Are you seeing
That's
it at the C-suite level? And what are your customers, your corporate customers asking of you?
Oh,
So I'm
that's
just
right.
curious if you've seen that environment shift a little bit.
Well, yes, but it's a little bit flipped on the head because I feel like we're the ones asking our corporate customers. We're asking the Coca-Colas and the Pepsis and our prime suppliers. We're asking them what they're doing for supplier diversity, as well as sustainability, as well as other metrics. So I really feel fortunately, we're in a little bit of the driver's seat where we're actually pitching that conversation. How far it goes up, though, we have it to our entire global C-suite. We're including supplier diversity now for the first time ever on our kind of global sustainability impact report, which before it wasn't. So I think that's wonderful, and I think that the main thing I would tell you is that a recent conversation I had was that our financial reporting team was very interested in supplier diversity. And that was the first time I had gotten them. And it's a blessing and a curse, right? When the financial reporting team is all up in your business, you're kind of like, oh goodness, but it's exciting, right? Because they want to know, where are we getting these numbers? How are we validating it? What are our plans for growth? So to have that level of interest is really game changing.
I like to add, Kevin, that we've been working with our individual business units to establish goals and understanding where the spend is, where the opportunity is. And that's starting with the leadership of those individual business units, so they understand the impact that they're currently having and what we can do to drive that spend higher.
Same.
So talk a little bit more about that, because for many on the call, they may not know what you mean in terms of goals and the types of companies you're tracking. So who is Duke Energy tracking?
So within our program, we currently track. First off, we're a federal government supplier provider. So that's part of our small business program. So we track small business separately, but under the diversity space, it's minority, women, veteran-owned, service-disabled veteran, and the federal hub zone. That's under the small business program. But we've added disability and LBGT recently to our diversity portfolio. So those are the groups that we track. So we look at those numbers individually within each of the businesses that we operate. So the two primary formations of Duke is the energy, the electric part of the company itself, Duke Energy, but also Piedmont Natural Gas, to understand where the opportunities are there as well. So we look at those goals, what the spend is, how we can drive it higher, not just putting a number on paper, but actually doing some analysis of upcoming projects. Where are the weaknesses? How can we address those weak areas to increase that spend? And that involves our chief procurement officer, who has constant communication with these business unit leaders to help drive that process, drive that initiative. So we have the conversations happening at the highest levels, but also making sure and measuring. If you're going to improve, you must measure, you must track to improve your spend.
And so, Kate, you were talking earlier about hootology, which I'm familiar with. And, I put that in the same vein as a lot of companies are now talking about what their economic impact is. And they have a report, pretty robust report that they provide to the community. And I'm even seeing some companies connect economic development, supply diversity, and environmental justice all under one umbrella. So what do you all see?
Yes, I mean, the people, planet, profit model of ESG, supplier diversity, fits very nicely into that. And more of my supplier diversity peers I'm seeing report into ESG or be a dotted line over to ESG. So it certainly makes sense. And I will say, as doing this for as long as I've done it, I don't care what caboose I need to hitch my engine to, or maybe I'm saying the wrong, hitch my engine to a caboose, or caboose to an engine, is that, I'll ride that train, whatever's going to get supplier diversity the most traction, right? So I do feel those reports are needed and necessary, but I guess for everyone that's on the call who's trying to think about developing a supplier diversity program, I think you do have to go back and you have to look, who are your end user consumers, your end users, really, and what are their requirements and what are they trying to get out of it. For Andrew in the federal space, I mean, he also has the government to answer to, so it's going to be very strict. This is what we need. These are the minimums. These are our definitions. For a retailer, we actually are a little bit broader, because we're looking at every customer who buys groceries, and that is literally every person on the, in the community, right, consumes groceries. But specifically, it could be different groups within different zip codes. It could mean different things to different people. If we have a store that's, you know, over-indexing in the Hispanic population, you know, we would want to really call out and make a concerted effort to do business with Hispanic-owned businesses. So I would say that supplier diversity, and again, I don't know if I'm 100% answering your question, but supplier diversity cannot be a one-size-fits-all approach. It has to look at your consumers that you're trying to get to and the overall impact that you're trying to get at. But to answer or to address what Andrea was saying about how we track it, yes, we look at minority-owned, women-owned, veteran-owned, LGBT-owned, and disabled-owned businesses. And we really require certifications. So certification is a big deal for us. Anyone who knows me knows that I harp on that, especially with my new financial team who wants to be all in my records. I have to verify that certification, and I know that's a contentious topic that maybe we'll have for this panel, or maybe not another day. But anyway, we track it, and I would say, and we talked about it earlier when we all met, is that where we look for it and where we are looking across the organization is literally under every rock. I mean, I get kind of excited when I go into our credit card spend file, and people might say, oh, credit card, well, you're just talking pennies. No, false. There are some very large purchases that are put on corporate credit cards, or P cards as they call, or travel cards. And there's actually a lot of opportunities for diverse owned suppliers. And there's actually a lot where you find a lot of diverse owned spend within the credit card file. So I look and track everywhere, and then I use that as almost to reverse engineer how to build our goals. What is the possibility for diverse suppliers? Don't tell me there's no opportunity in this area, because I actually see we've actually spent this much money with diverse owned suppliers in this category, just in credit card purchases alone, you know? So I very softly and sweetly, with my Southern charm, tell internal stakeholders that yes, there is actually an opportunity for diverse suppliers in every area.
So let's go down that road a little bit more, because y'all really didn't need me. I'm kind of following y'all. You know, when I was in the military, one of my old colonels used to wear a hat that said, "I'm the leader, which way did they go?" So I'm feeling very much like that right now. But let's talk a little bit about those creative solutions, because Kate, you talked about P cards, but what are some of the other creative ways you all have identified spend for those that are listening who are challenged to find other creative ways of engaging diverse businesses in their supply chain? Andrew, you want to take that off?
Yeah, take it first, because I want a clarification for what Andrew, ways we found it currently within our company, or ways we found opportunities for it. Which one?
Well, we can delve into a little bit of both.
Okay.
One of the areas that we've been successful in is in a financial services area. So, you know, Duke, like many other major corporations, go to Wall Street for stock offerings, bond offerings as well. There are diverse companies out there who do that every day of the week. So that's one area that's probably non-traditional that you can look to find diverse suppliers to help you with your spend. Deposits in Black-owned banks. That's another area that we've done traditionally over the years, and utilizing Black-owned banks for our needs in terms of deposits.
So Andrew, why would a corporation invest in a minority bank or minority-led financial institution? What's the justification for doing that?
To impact the communities we serve, number one, by Duke dollars flowing through an African-American community or any other minority group utilizing those banks, they provide a special service, a special need, and understanding how those communities operate, particularly from a business standpoint, and making dollars available where they may have not been available traditionally, or where there's been some challenges in the past to get a business loan to keep a business up and running. That's very important. And just simply by having our dollars there makes a big difference in those communities.
And I would suggest, in my previous life, you and I have had this conversation before, that this is an area where a corporation can be selfish. And what I mean by that is you're investing in a minority bank, but invest in that bank with strings attached. And what I mean by that is all of us are challenged with our supply chain leaders saying we cannot find diverse suppliers in particular spend categories. Or they say, well, when we say we can't find them, we mean we can't find them big enough that have enough scale to support a company our size. And so you turn to the diverse suppliers and you say, how can you get bigger so you can support us? And they say, I can't get bigger without having access to capital. And so here we are, corporations with money sitting in banks that's just drawing nominal interest. And we have those diverse companies in our supply chains that are saying we need access to capital. So when I say put those deposits in minority institutions with strings attached, what I mean by that is put it in the bank, but also say we want to put some kind of guarantees in place for those diverse companies in our supply chain, because we've already vetted them, otherwise they wouldn't be in the supply chain. But they have challenges getting access to capital. Well, I just put money in your bank. So the capital's there. They're in my supply chain, so I know they're vetted and they're a good supplier. So why not go that extra step and say, we got money sitting there. You're a great bet. If we're going to bet on anyone, it will be someone that we're already doing business with because we already pay you. So we know you have revenue. So we'll do some type of guarantee based on deposits that we put in your bank. That's what I mean about strings attached.
Yes, as I mentioned before, that local economic impact of the communities you serve, that's your purpose for being there. Truly, we're in business to make a profit, but our customers and meeting their needs and expectations is a very big part of that. So it's part of what we do. Another way is partnerships with between diverse-owned businesses and large prime businesses. A good example of we're building a new 46-story tower in Uptown Charlotte. One of the general contractors on that that's doing the interior is a minority-owned business, McFarland Construction. And they're helped leading the way in driving that process. They've been a supplier to do just doing facility services over the years, started businesses that started in a bedroom that's grown to a multi-million-dollar business now, helping us out in many ways. They've done solar projects for us, but to step up and to do a 46-story tower, to be part of that was a huge win for us. And that doesn't come easy. You know, from a supply diversity standpoint, you really have to step in internally, convince stakeholders. Here's a reputable company. They built a reputation inside of Duke. We know them. Let's give them a chance. Let's trust them, and it's working out well for us.
So let's chat about that a minute, Kate, because the argument is if I engage diverse suppliers, if I break up these big construction projects into smaller bite-sized chunks, it's going to cost me more money. In order for me to engage with minority and women-owned businesses, it's more expensive. What do you say to that?
I want to see the proof of that. I want to see show me the receipts. Show me the receipts, because I don't believe that it's more expensive. If anything, I think it's actually quite cost competitive. You know, doing second tier, I should say subcontracting plans that are really prescriptive like that. That is no different than what's already done in large subcontracting plans with real estate and commercial development. You're just saying, you know, instead of like, we want you to use this supplier and this supplier that has this designation and this license to, you know, for Rhode Island electricity, you're just saying, I want you to use a diverse supplier. It's no different. So the good news is that large construction firms and property management firms, I feel like they're already pretty on board with this, so they don't get scared when that contract language comes at them. However, it has to come at them in the beginning when they are bidding on the business, Because if
Right.
it comes after they've been awarded the business, they're like, oh, we couldn't do it. We already have our that's the reason why we quoted you this price, because we already had our team already built in, so you have to get it, you have to dangle that carrot, say this is how you're going to get the business with us because we need you to do these things. Can I go back real quickly though to the bank part though? Because I got really hot and
Oh, I was
excited.
going to circle back with you because I know what you've done and I know you're chomping at the bit to talk about it. So
It's
go
like
for
my, I mean, but besides getting a diverse own like food product on the shelf that I really advocate for, this other thing was pretty big. This past November, Food Lion made a $50 million deposit supporting Merchants and Farmers Bank, M&F Bank. And M&F is the 8th largest Black-owned financial institution in the U.S. and the only bank in North Carolina to have the CDFI designation, the Community Development Fund. So, but Food Lion, to y'all's point, made this deposit specifically to provide greater financial opportunities for the communities that they serve, which Food Lion operates in, including loans to small businesses, investments in technology, and financial literacy programs. That's the full circle picture that we all want, right? Now, I know that there's all these, like you said, strings attached. We haven't even begun. Let's put that differently. I have not even begun to start to tie the strings that I want to come from this, mainly because probably the FDIC and other financial places would say I'm not allowed to, but because I want us to practice what we preach, and I want our suppliers who are in our diverse owned suppliers who are in that territory, in that geographic territory, I want them to be banking at M&F Bank. Like, I want that full picture. So I haven't started that conversation, but y'all are getting me all excited to start those conversations.
Well, I'm glad to hear that because, part of it is your suppliers having access to capital, but then there are other things we can do in supply chain to support diverse suppliers as well. And some suppliers are scared to ask. And a good example of that is net payment terms. So can you all talk about that, if you've done anything creative in that space?
Sure. We know that particularly during this COVID crisis, Duke Energy has stepped up. And even before that, if a supplier was needing to get paid early, we changed the terms to net zero. Started with a good conversation. We know, particularly with the cost of fuel, if a company is pretty heavy fuel dependent, that their expenses have gone up astronomically. And so early payment is definitely a way to help them with that. Duke Energy has also entered a partnership with Bank of America, where suppliers can get paid like the next day, after a day or two after submitting an invoice. Through that program, company signs up, Duke Energy works with the supplier, one generate early credit, but anything associated with costs that we're working there to mitigate the cost in terms of when they typically would have got it paid in 90 days, now it's down to 0. So we're working with Bank of America to make that come to fruition.
That I had not heard that. So how are you all marketing that? Or is it just marketed internally with your suppliers?
It's basically internal with suppliers we currently have contracts with. We make them aware of the program if they're interested. And it's open to all suppliers from that standpoint. But diversity does play a big role in it. And we know that as part of Bank of America's diversity initiative, they're working with us to target diverse-owned businesses for that program.
Got it. And so are there other creative areas you're finding, Kate, spin, like Tailspin or any other creative places?
Yes. Well, first of all, let me say that Bank of America payment terms thing at a previous company I worked for doing supplier diversity. Well, we did that too, and it was really successful. What was surprising to me, Andrew, is that not every supplier wanted to take them up on it. I don't know why. I thought that was an awesome opportunity. At the current company at Ahold Delhaize, what I mentioned earlier, that we're trying to dangle the certification carrot because I want more of our diverse owned suppliers to get certified. And we are working with our financial team, like I mentioned, to say, okay, can this be one of the perks that we give better payment terms if for just the certified suppliers. And what would that be a big carrot? And I'm pretty sure it's going to happen. It's a little too soon to tell. I'll keep y'all updated as we progress. But Kevin, to your exact question.
Part of the why might be some MBEs and WBEs thinking that if they're taking advantage of a zero net payment term, that it may signal to their corporate customer that they're having financial issues.
Right.
And so that's why I'm fascinated, Andrew, by what you've done, because to reassure your diverse suppliers that we're not thinking that way. We're trying to make sure you have great cash flow and that you're a strong supplier. That's pretty significant.
Mm-hmm.
We have a vested interest from that standpoint as well. We want to make sure these companies are strong and can provide the products and services needed to run our business. Once we sign that contract, we are counting on them. And so they need to be financially healthy. We also partner with EY, Ernst & Young, in terms of providing some risk assessment of their business to make sure that they're ready to take on larger contracts or to grow their business, that they're positioned well. So we've been using some other entities to help grow our programs. One company can't do it all by themselves. One thing that's great about our industry and supply diversity, we share information from a competitive standpoint. Little or none is this. Now we all want to, trumpet what we've done that's good and great and make it known what our challenges are as well. But the amount of shared information to drive this process, you would be really amazed how people work together. And even within the National Minority Supply Development Council, for Food Lion, they have a food industry services group. We have a utilities industry service group where we share ideas and information to grow diverse spend. Sure, we're competitive in the open marketplace, but imagine having professionals come together, share ideas and strategies to better each other. And that's a great thing from my point of view.
I mean, I just wrote it down when you said Ernst & Young risk assessments. I wrote that down. I was like, thank you, Andrew. That was a good nugget. So no, I totally agree about sharing. And I wonder if other professions within corporate America, do any other professions share like we do? Because other departments and other functions could be seen as a little bit competitive. You certainly wouldn't do it in HR, right? You wouldn't want to talk about your best candidates to another company. You wouldn't want to do it in finance. You don't want to talk about the company jewels, but you certainly do when you're talking about suppliers. You definitely want to talk about your best suppliers. So you ask about tail spend, and yes, I'm pitching it heavily within my company. I've used it at other companies as a supplier diversity lever, and I think it's brilliant. I didn't come up with it though, so I won't take credit for it. There's several NMSDC certified MBEs that provide tail spend aggregation and procure to pay services. And for those of you who don't know what that means, they basically look at your tail spend of your procurement. So everything that's at the very end, that's like $5,000 and smaller. Either they're one-off purchases or they're a lot of consistent little small purchases that are done, name tags, trophies. I'm just thinking of little stuff that you buy constantly, and they're not a managed contract that goes out with an actual purchase order and a big 3 to 5 year contract. They're a little stuff. They add up, and you don't want a company to come in and just chop off the tail, which is what the procurement people say. Oh, we're going to chop off our tail. We're trying to consolidate our supply chain. We're trying to consolidate our supplier base because all those individual POs and those checks, those all cost money, and we're trying to chop off the tail. I don't want that. None of us want that, because you know why? Because diverse owned suppliers live in the tail, a lot of them. And our whole raison d'etre is to try to get those little ones and grow them to be larger ones. So to chop off is not a good thing to do. But a solution is to bring in a certified, hopefully diverse owned supplier who can gently, not chop, but gently manage all those. Basically take on their receivables, pay them, and then all you do is pay that one company. Now, some of you might be thinking, oh yeah, but that sounds like a pass-through. No, it's not, because usually they can negotiate better terms. They are paying those suppliers quicker than you would. They can negotiate a little bit of cost savings in their aggregation, but in the procure to pay services alone, they can be saving your company money. So I'm a big fan of that, and I won't officially go on the record and say we have it instituted at AHTF USA, but it's something I'm always advocating for. And if it's not good for our company, you know, it could be good for other companies. So please, everyone, write that down too. As I just stole from Andrew, you can steal that.
Well, I'm stealing from you as well, Kate, because I want to know more about the program itself. What we
Okay.
have in the electric utility industry is a lot of consolidation. The bigger are getting even bigger, particularly those companies who provide those various services when it comes to line crews and vegetation management and things like that. The companies are growing larger and larger, and as they take up more space in our industry, you know, we're really leaning on them to do more. But at the same time, those areas of spend that you just mentioned, we have to be more creative to make sure that small businesses still have a role to play with the company. You have to be intentional about it, or it will get gobbled up in some of these large, gigantic, I can do everything for you type contracts with a multinational corporation. And while the financials may push you that way, to some extent, you got to find creative ways to have win-win situations where you can lower your costs for your customers, but at the same time, being able to include diverse suppliers in the mix as well.
Well, this has been fun, y'all. I'm looking at a time check, and time has gotten away from us a little bit. Now that it's 12:31. Seems like we just got started, really. And so we might want to just wrap up with a few parting thoughts and then go into the Q&A session. And so let me kick that piece off real quick, because we heard some really good nuggets about ecology, and we heard about EY's risk assessment as things that we should take away and use as a resource for us. But there are other resources that are available to you as well. You have the MWBE Coordinators Network. You've got the Hub Office for the state. You've got MBDA. You have the Greater Women's Business Council, which covers North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia. You have Carolinas, Virginia Minority Supply Development Council, which covers both Carolinas and Virginia. And you have the Institute, all as resources that you can plug into for additional support. Any other parting thoughts you all have before we go into Q&A? Kate.
I will say the CVMSDC has been single-handedly the most collaborative partner that I've had while being at Food Lion, because it's a two-way street, right? I'm constantly sending diverse owned suppliers to them to get certified or to get information about financing or capital or just anything. I mean, I'm constantly saying they've got a resource, they've got a resource, they've got a resource. And I know I'm putting them in good hands. Likewise, they blow up my pager daily, and they're constantly sending me referrals of NBE saying, I'd like you to look at this one. I'd like you to look at this one. And, you know, our desk are so busy, and we really do try to get back to every diverse owned supplier that pings us. But, you know, when you get 452 IT staffing supplier inquiries a week, it's hard. So I'm a little bit, I don't want to say I'm preferential, but when CVMSDC sends me an email of a supplier, I'm like, all right, I'll look at them because I know they've been vetted and they're really good. So that's not a parting thought. That's just an endorsement for CVMSDC. I guess one of my parting thoughts is I would say that in order for a supplier diversity program, I shouldn't say initiative, I don't like the word initiative, program to be successful, it has to be tied to the missions and values of the organization. And how to do that is you have to do it specifically. You have to do it graphically. And I know that sounds silly, but you know how every company has their big picture of their like 5 missions or 5 values, and it's got the bubbles, right? I like sometimes graphically like duplicate those bubbles and put diverse owned suppliers and talk about things that like relate to those bubbles, and verbally. And when I say verbally, this is very important, because when you're speaking about supplier diversity internally to your internal stakeholders, lead with the values of the organization and then tie in supplier diversity next. Don't go in hot and heavy talking about supplier diversity. Say, as I know, blah, blah, blah is so important to our company. This is what I would like to talk to you about, this diverse owned supplier. And I give this same advice to potential diverse owned suppliers too, right? And Andrew, Kevin, you back me up. I tell them, when you go and meet with a stakeholder, don't lead with the fact that you're a diverse owned business and that you're da-da-da-da-da and da-da-da-da. Talk about what you do. On your bottom of your email or on your presentation deck, you can include the thing. You don't need to sell it. They already know because I got you this meeting, right? So, okay, that's my parting thought. Mic drop.
I concur with everything you said there. The value you bring, the innovation you bring, that's what we're looking for. That's what's going to get you in the door. That's what's going to keep you in the door. Just saying that you're diverse it takes far much more than that. We talk about checking the box. Well, maybe that is checking the box. But we're trying to impact communities here. We're trying to create jobs. We're impacting our customers at the end of the day. So I concur with every statement that you made there in terms of your interactions, but just be very intentional about what it is that you want to provide and how you're the best and how you're different. You must bring value proposition to the table. We can, particularly in many areas, as you mentioned, like some of the IT areas where there's a dime a dozen, you've got to show some way that you are different, better, but definitely come prepared. I definitely tell diverse suppliers that. Talk to us beforehand. Let us see your presentation before you sit down to meet with some of our stakeholders. And so we make sure that you're ready. We can tell you what the culture look like. And corporations, they are different. The cultures are different from one to another. So utilize your diverse supplier resources, utilize those agencies, supplier diversity agencies that was mentioned earlier. We support all of those agencies along with Food Lion in terms of being at the table and supporting them to help you increase your business acumen. But that's what we're here for.
Well, I appreciate that, Andrew and Kate. This has been a great conversation. And so let's see, Evan, if we have any questions in the chat or anything.
Thank you, Kevin, and thank you, Kate and Andrew. Looking in the Q&A, we don't have any there, nor have I received any in advance or by email. So it looks like you all were thorough enough to answer everyone's questions, but definitely we'll open the space if anyone has any questions in the Q&A, if they want to send them to me by email, but also you can send questions ongoing, to me by email, and we can definitely share those with our panelists to maybe connect with you individually if you have questions or if you need any tips or guidance on how to implement these practices in your organizations, or even how to advocate for the implementation of these practices in your organization. As far as contacting me, you can contact me at evan.grant@doa.nc.gov. And notice my first name is EVIN. And you should be able to see it on the screen, but evan.grant@doa.nc.gov. And you should have received my email address through the invitation that you received for the webinar today. But then again, if I don't see any questions, we don't have any, I do want to thank Kevin for his volunteering and his helping us with planning this, but then also being willing to moderate this panel. As we were planning to put this panel together, we realized he was the resident expert in this, and it was like, oh, well, maybe you could just moderate this one. And so definitely thank you for that. Actually, just did have a question come in just now. How can a WBE get loans for purchasing a property? If that's something you all have any expertise in.
I think that's probably Kevin's question there with his banking experience.
Well, what I would say is it kind of goes back to what Kate was mentioning earlier. Don't lead in with the WBE. So how can a company get a loan to purchase a property? You have existing banking relationships. So I would always start with your existing banking relationship. If you've had some challenges there, you can also lean on those intermediary organizations and those banks that have specific programs that are targeted toward minorities and women. So to Kate's point of putting $50 million into M&F Bank, M&F now has to loan that money out. It can't just sit in the bank because they got to pay interest to Kate's company on that money. So it can't just sit there. So I'm sure M&F is developing programs that will target certain types of companies to get those dollars out. Another very important group are community development financial institutions. So Kate mentioned CDFIs earlier. There are actually 6 minority-led CDFIs in North Carolina. Mechanics and Farmers is the only for-profit bank that is minority-led. The other 5 are nonprofits. There's one in Charlotte, there's one in Greensboro, the Institute has one, and there's one in Raleigh. So they're easily accessible to you, and all of them have special programs to address the needs of minorities and women.
Thank you.
And I would say there's a bank that recently opened up in Chicago. It's called First Women's Bank, and they're the only women-founded, women-owned, and women-led commercial bank in the country with a strategic focus on the women's economy. So their clients are entrepreneurs, and they're encouraging women-owned businesses to go there. So I don't know if Chicago, that might be too far out of your reach. I don't think you have to visit there every week, but you could inquire. But you know how when you're shopping for a flight online, and it said, or maybe it's Airbnb, I don't remember one of them, and it says something like, are you flexible on your going and returning dates? And if you say, yeah, you're flexible, you can really shop around for the best rate. My question to you, who you're looking for property, this woman business owner who's looking for property, are you flexible with your location? Because if you are, go after the hub zones, go after those underutilized zip codes in the area in the city that you're looking for, because you might get great rates, great tax incentives, and there's tons of programs out there for hub zone economic development and loans.
And to that point, Kate, there are cities that own land as well that would love to see it developed, particularly in inner cities and urban communities. So to your point, if you're flexible, there are lots of options out there.
And when you go and ask for the loan, make sure you really detail what you're going to be doing with this business. Are you going to be opening a cannabis shop? Or are you going to be making granola where you're going to be employing people with autism and, all these things? Add all the color in your package about what you're going to be doing with this building.
Thank you. Those are good points. I think with purchasing any property right now, I think flexibility is key, whether it's commercial property, residential property. And so that is a good point. Yeah, thank you both for that. Nothing else has come in. And so I do still want to also be conscious of time, but as I'm checking my email and checking the chat, but definitely appreciate Kate, you and Andrew for being willing to spend your time with us today and bring your expertise and bring your knowledge, just because these are conversations that a lot of people are wanting to have. They don't know who to have them with. They don't know where to go to get advice, and definitely appreciate your willingness to be here and to talk about the things that are passionate for you all and how you're advocating for them in your organizations, and also just with the groups that you're in. And hopefully this first conversation is a springboard for a lot of the people attending today to now be able to engage with others and to have these similar conversations and talk about how important these initiatives are, particularly, diverse supplier programs, and being real intentional about how they connect to their vendors and how they connect to the firms that they work with. So definitely want to thank you both for being here. Definitely hope you continue to join us either as attendees for future panels or again as guests as we move forward. Definitely will get you all connected with the Department of Commerce and make sure I advocate for both of you to be like, make sure you all tap into this resource. But to the attendees, I want to thank you all for being here for the first session. Again, we'll have the second session on May 20th. That will really focus on what's happening inside of your business. So DEI training, DEI and employee resource groups, so affinity groups within your company, and really what are you doing to create that inclusive culture in your company And then in June, we'll talk about recruiting and hiring, and really kind of it'll blend into some of that training because retention is an important piece of that. And a lot of that retention is going to be related to the culture that you have within your business. And so if you have not signed up for the May 20th or June 17th sessions, please do so. I'm going to check our settings because I know a lot of you who called in were having issue getting in on the computer, so you called in instead. And so we'll make sure our settings for the next two enable you to join by computer. But in the meantime, feel free to reach out directly to me by email, and we can connect you to our panelists if you come up with any other questions, as well as staying connected with the Andrea Harris Task Force. Information is on the DOA website that you should have links to in all of the invitations, or you can reach out directly to me if you ever want to attend any other Andrea Harris Task Force event. All of our task force meetings are public, and so you can attend those public meetings as well. The next one will be May 4th at 10 o'clock. And you can reach out to me if you would like to be added to that mailing list to have the information on how to attend that public meeting to hear about the work of the Andrea Harris Task Force, aside from what's happening here with the business engagement group. I don't know if Justin wants to just hop back on and say anything, but definitely wanted to thank Justin for thinking about this space and allowing us to use his idea to create his space to have these conversations among our business partners in North Carolina. I'm going to leave the space open for a few more minutes if any more questions come in, if Justin wanted to hop in and say anything before we close out.
Evan, I think you covered it all. I just want to say thank you to you and our panelists and Kevin. I think it was a great panel and appreciate everybody's participation and attendance.
I was going to say thank you, Evan and Justin. This has been really great. And I gave the CVMSDC this big, plug, but really to the DOA of North Carolina. That's the organization that we should be giving the big plug to. You're an excellent resource, so we really appreciate it.
Yeah, we appreciate the relationship we have with DOA as well in the Hub program. We recognize their certification, have been active over the years, involved in their in-person events. And so once those get started again, we'll definitely be there to support those as well.
Certainly, and I believe
Tanya is on as well, Evan.
Yeah.
So I don't know if she'd like to make any comments.
Okay, yeah, I see Tanya hopped on, who's also been very instrumental in helping us put this together from the Department of Transportation, Office of Civil Rights. Her and Ebony Pittman have been truly instrumental in helping us push this idea forward. And I heard you all talk about the Hub office a little bit. Director Tammy Hall, I think, did hop on for a second as an attendee, and she has been very instrumental in how we think about this space as well. And the importance of the Hub office and the work they do. And so wanted to make sure to put that plug in. I hate that she's missed it if she's not still on, but definitely the work of the Hub office, working closely with Kevin Price and the Institute, and definitely, to anyone who wants to get engaged more with the Department of Administration's Hub office, do reach out and let us know. We can connect you to Director Tammy Hall. Hey, Tanya, thank you for joining us. If there's anything you want to say.
I would just say this has been a fantastic webinar, and I really appreciate the collaboration and the insight from our panelists today. There are some nuggets that I glean that I'm able to take back to my office and enhance conversations around equity and inclusion. And all of you, and definitely the Institute, has been a tremendous partner to my office directly and offering technical assistance and support to our office to help increase supplier diversity, which is key for our department. It has been, it will continue to be, but there'll be some force to make it better going forward. So I appreciate the synergies and the collaboration of the Andrea Harris Task Force, and to you, Evan, and your team, and Justin, for putting this much needed webinar together. Hopefully we'll have several more beyond what we have scheduled to continue the conversation. So thank you again.
Yeah, certainly. Thank you, Tanya. And so with that, again, I hope you all join us May 20th. I'll be moderating the panel on DEI internal training and employee resource groups. Tanya Smith will be moderating the June 17th panel on hiring, recruiting, and some of that internal mentorship aspect. We also will have guest appearances from the Department of Commerce to talk about some of the work their Office of DEI is doing as it relates to private businesses in North Carolina, making sure all of our attendees are connected with the Department of Commerce. And I'm working to get Secretary Cashwell to do a quick cameo on June 17th who is the secretary of the Department of Administration, has been really, really supportive of these initiatives that we've been working with through the Andrea Harris Task Force. So go ahead. I've been trying to stall time just in case people came up with questions, but I think on that note, we're at a good place.
Shameless plug, Evan. We
Yes,
have the Executive Networking Conference that's coming up August 11th through the 13th in Pinehurst. So that is another opportunity for us to continue this conversation and do that in Pinehurst. And what better place to do it than Pinehurst? I mean, really.
Yeah, very, very nice. And around this time of year is perfect weather. Yeah. Well, thank you to all of our panelists. Thank you to all of our attendees. We hope to see you all on May 20th. And with that, I'll stop the recording. All of our attendees will leave. I'll jump back into a practice session for our group just for a short debrief, and we'll be good to go.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.